This evening, instead of talking about any particular individual in the Torah, I want to talk about a general concept, a general idea. And that is, when it talks about the matriarchs, or all the really great women in Torah, never fails to mention that they were beautiful. And we need to understand this, because the wisest of all men said, and we repeat it every night, every Friday night, Sheker hachein vehevel hayefi, the falseness of charm and the vanity of beauty. It's the fear of God that should be admired. Well, if beauty is vanity and charm is false, why are the holiest women in the world given credit for being beautiful? And of course we could say, well, the Torah is talking about a spiritual beauty, an inner beauty. The inner and the external can't be that far apart that one of them is the absolute truth and the other one is vanity and falsehood. You can say physical beauty is only the lowest manifestation of beauty. And inner beauty, spiritual beauty, that's the true beauty. But to dismiss it as vanity and false, how did it get to be false if it used to be true? How does truth become false? That can't be. You can have a smaller version, you can have a lower version, you can have a diminished version of truth, but truth can't become false. I believe the Medrash says that Sarah was extremely beautiful, but not like Chava, not like Eve. In fact, the beauty of Sarah compared to Eve is like a monkey compared to a human being. That's pretty extreme. Pretty extreme description there. Not only does the Torah recognize and praise the beauty of the women, but actually gets into a whole discussion, like who is more beautiful and how much more beautiful. So in general, we need to try to understand a little bit the deeper meaning of beauty and why is it associated with women more than men. It's not that men are not described as beautiful. It says that Yosef, for example, was very good looking. Got him into trouble a little bit. But men are also described as beautiful. David is described as beautiful. So let's understand what that's all about. What does the Torah say about the feminine quality, the feminine attributes? When God created the world, God created Adam, it says, male and female he created them. And this is before God separates the rib, before God takes the rib from Adam and turns it into a woman. Right in the beginning of the creation of man, it says God created man in his image, male and female he created them. Actually, a human being, what we learn from that statement, is that a human being, a mensch, an Adam, is only when it's both male and female. So when God originally created Adam, male and female, then he was a mensch. Then he was a human being, an Adam. When they got separated, then they each became a half human. And when they come back together again in marriage, they again become Adam, they become complete as at the beginning of creation. Now here we have to say something before we get into the distinction between men and women. I have to say something about the similarities. Men and women are human beings. I don't know if this gets a lot of attention, but it's true. We're always talking about the differences. But the differences come only as a secondary reality. The primary reality is that men and women are human beings. Now, one of the problems, philosophical problems, that create all sorts of social and personal problems between men and women is our definition of what is a human being. In many societies, in many philosophies, and in many religions, the definition of the human being does not include women. So it's not a matter of equal rights, it's not a matter of different roles, it's a matter of basic definition. The basic definition of a human being has to include men and women. Then we can divide our roles, we can go our separate ways, Mars, Venus, whatever. But first we both have to be human beings. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. There are attitudes, philosophies, assumptions concerning the human status that does not include women. In fact, there are certain definitions of human that don't include Jews or gypsies or cripples, which tells us right there that the definition is wrong. So, for example, if the definition of a human being is that he conquers cities, and women are not equipped to conquer cities, then it's not a difference in role, it's not a difference in prominence, it's not a difference in dominance. Women are not included in this society's definition of the human being. If the human being is a warrior, then it's only men, it's not women. Then what are women? Some kind of a support system to the human race. So for most of history, in non-Jewish philosophies, women were always a mystery because they were something other than what was understood and defined to be a human being. What the Torah says about a human being, the ultimate definition of a human being, has nothing to do with strength or weakness. It has nothing to do with aggression or passivity. It has nothing to do with dominance or domination. The definition of a human being is, working our way up, an intelligent creature, a creature that has freedom of choice, and a creature that has a mission that is part of the overall eternal plan of making the world godly. That's a human being. Who's left out? There was a young man in a yeshiva, not a Hasidic yeshiva, but he was a very gifted young man. Brilliant, great memory, profound thinker. He had all the tools that helped him be a great student. His best friend, it turns out, was not gifted. He struggled. So his friend, feeling kind of worthless, went to the dean of the yeshiva and asked an explanation. What's going on? How am I supposed to function? Where do I fit in? Who am I? And basically, in different words, the dean of the yeshiva told him that if he tries really hard, he could at least learn something, and that's better than nothing. When this boy came back and told his friend, his gifted friend, what the dean had said, his friend was hurt. What are you telling this guy? That he's not really useful, he's not really a student, he's not really a valid human being, but if he tries really hard, he can at least amount to something. And to this gifted friend, this seemed so unfair. So he wrote to the Rebbe. He went outside the system, so to speak, of his yeshiva. He wrote to the Rebbe. And basically what he said to the Rebbe was, this is what happened to my friend, this was the advice he was given, or the description that he was given of himself. And the question that he's presenting to the Rebbe is not fair. Even if after trying very hard he manages to become a rather decent student, why does he have to work so hard and in the end just be a decent student, and I can breeze through it and be a great student without half trying? It's not fair. So the Rebbe basically answered him in a letter. He said, being gifted, being smart, knowing a lot can be very nice, but who says that that's your purpose in life? That could be the distraction. We know, for example, there are people who are beautiful, physically beautiful, and that's their curse. That distracts them from all the important things in life. They get by on their looks. What is a human being really all about? A human being is a partner with God in creation, and each human being, as a unique partner, has a certain area and a certain amount of godliness that they're supposed to produce in the world. And in that task, Every person is gifted, depending on what your task is. So whatever it is that God created you for, in that you are gifted. You have all the talents you need. Person finds that he has more talent than he needs, he has to question himself whether he's doing the right thing. I think we always use this example of a you call some guy up to come fix your plumbing or your electricity, and he drives up with a big truck and he comes in with hundreds of tools, with all sorts of equipment. You think, wait a minute, something's wrong here. I need an adjustment. I need something fixed. You walk in here with all this equipment and with all these tools, it's overkill. Are you sure you know what the job is? If you understood the job, you wouldn't bring all these tools. You're overqualified. You're overreaching. Maybe you don't know what your task is. And in fact, this is a symptom. When a person doesn't know exactly what the job is, what does he do? He brings more tools. Well, just in case. So the guy who brings all the tools is revealing to the world that he doesn't really know the job. But if we find our job and we know what our purpose is, we have all the tools. We don't have to bring a truckload. This is what a human being is. A human being is uniquely gifted to fulfill the purpose for which he was created. Therefore, does it matter whether you're brilliant or not? Does it matter whether you're strong or not? Does it matter whether you're male or female? Whether you're Jewish or non-Jewish? Whatever divine purpose God had in creating you, those tools and those gifts and those abilities necessary for that job, you have. You have them all. God would not and does not create a person for a certain purpose and then not give him the tools to achieve that purpose. So by the very definition that Torah gives to the human being, we understand why no one is excluded. It's a good definition. A good definition doesn't exclude anybody. But in religious thinking, most religions in the world have a definition of the human being that is strictly male and does not include women. Also, most religions, by their definition of the human being, do not include members of other religions. Now, of course, there are times when, because you hate somebody, you demonize them, and you're convinced with all sorts of brilliant arguments that this person you happen to hate should not belong to the human race and should not be allowed to mingle with other humans. But that's a subjective hatred. Here we're talking more of a philosophical exclusion. By your definition of what life is about, you've excluded most human beings. So because Torah doesn't do that, because the definition that Torah gives to the human being is an inclusive definition rather than an exclusive, therefore there isn't that much made or that much talk or that much discussion about men and women. Because bottom line, do what you got to do. Do what you were created to do. Whether it's masculine, feminine, what's the difference? However, God did create two distinct kinds of human beings, male and female. So we have to understand, what is this additional identity? What is this specific definition that is given to man versus woman, or woman versus man? So let's see what it says about the feminine quality that God invested into the world. One of the most well-known statements about women is that women are given an extra measure of bina. Here we're talking about intellectual function, the function of the mind. And in the function of the mind, men, masculine qualities, are identified with chachma, and the female is identified with bina, because the female has more bina than the male. What is chachma and what is bina? Chachma means the invention of an idea, the creation of a new idea, the discovery of new information. Bina means the development of an idea that had been discovered. That's the basic definition. And this is how the mind works. First, it discovers an idea. Then it thoroughly examines the idea, becomes thoroughly familiar with the idea in all of its details, in all of its applications, and so on. And then, as a result of the Chachma and the Bina, the mind, in understanding an idea, will then give birth to an emotion in the heart that is either an attraction or a repulsion. You're either drawn closer to the object or subject that you're studying, or you're repelled by it. You want to avoid it. That's called emotions. Here's another important principle in anything that we try to understand about the world and about ourselves. When we view existence or reality as a continuously descending creation, everything began with truth. The real truth, the original truth, the ultimate truth is there's God. And then it's downhill from there. So creation, reality, existence, these are all degrees of the diminishment of God's existence. When we view everything in this fashion, many things begin to make sense that don't make sense and that science or philosophy cannot explain. If everything is moving downwards, that there is a truth that precedes every stage of existence, and every stage of existence is a little less true than the former stage, then one of the important questions, one of the important issues is how much of the higher truth lingers or influences or continues to exist in the lower truth. Here's an example of a teacher and a student. A student can sit in a class with a teacher, with a philosopher, and spend many hours together. And then you want to know, was he a good student? Did he succeed in his studies? How do you measure the success? The success of the student, of the studies, is to what degree did the knowledge of the teacher carry over into the student? How much of the teacher's mind is now active in the student? That's how you measure good study, good learning, successful study. How much of the original truth is retained in the second stage or the lower stage of truth? So we have Chachma and we have Bina. We have the discovery of an idea, and we have the development of the idea. Where is this coming from? Where do they come from? They come from an aspect within our soul that we call pre-creation. Because it's the part of the soul that we really can't control. We can't master that part of our soul. Our voluntary functions begin with Chachma, and then Bina, and then, of course, that produces the emotions, and then the behavior, and so on. But all personality that is our state of being begins with Chachma. Prior to that, there's a lot of stuff, but that's not us. That's beyond us. That's out of our reach. Now the question is, this truth that is beyond our reach, how present is it? How much effect does it have on what we are? How much of the intangible me is affecting the tangible me? Well, that depends on which part of myself I'm talking about. The intangible part of the soul is expressed better, more, in Bina than in Chachma. Although Chachma comes first, Chachma is the father of all human activity, because you can't have Bina without first having Chachma. Yet, the intangible, what is called the crown of our soul, the Keser, expresses itself more in the Bina, or is felt more in the Bina than in the Chachma. What does this mean? Has anyone ever come up with a good definition, with a convincing definition for beauty? What is beautiful? There are all sorts of attempts. The most recent attempt at describing beauty is symmetry. Anything that is perfectly symmetrical is beautiful. Of course, some people find asymmetry beautiful, or in some way more beautiful. But let's work with the symmetry. Hasidus says that beauty is the result of harmony. Nothing is beautiful by itself. Beauty is a byproduct of harmony. When colors are harmonious, then it's beautiful. When you have just one color, then it's just one color. Neither beautiful nor ugly. Beauty has not yet been invented when you have only one color. We might say that Chachma, which is not beautiful, but is intensely pleasurable. What is the pleasure of Chachma? And why doesn't it have beauty? It's because Chachma is a single entity. You get a flash, you catch the idea. There's one idea, one kernel of truth that Chachma discovers. And the discovery is so intense that it produces great pleasure, the pleasure of discovery. But there's no beauty there because all you discover at one time is one kernel of truth. One principle, one idea. Maybe this is why when a man comes up with an idea and he starts excitedly describing it to his wife, and his wife says, "Yeah, but," that's it. He hates you. No buts. Don't tell me that. Yeah, but it doesn't apply. Yeah, but it won't work. What do you have to do that for? I got this brilliant idea and it's so pleasurable. You say, yeah, but that's it. You killed it. You always do that. Why do you have to do that? See, but that's Bina. Bina means that is a great idea, but not now. It doesn't apply to me. Not to us. Not here. Not this way. That's Bina. Because Bina is developing the idea. And how do you develop an idea? You bring out the details. And what are details? Part of the details of any idea is when, where, and how. It's not always, not every time, and not any way. It's got to be a certain way, a certain time, a certain place. But that ruins the whole fun of the idea. So, in Chachma, there's only one point. There are no details. There's no when, where, and how. There's just the idea, which makes it so pleasurable, because it's so focused, it's so concentrated. When you bring in the Bina, now you're bringing in various aspects, details that are not all compatible. It's like, it's a good idea, but it won't work if you... So already you're creating contrasts. Now, when you study a subject in Bina, and you come up with many, many details, the pleasure is lost. It's almost painful. And that's why you see children suffering great frustration. The teacher said that rain is very, very important, and without rain we couldn't live. But then when it was raining, the teacher said we couldn't go outside. Well, come on. It's frustrating. But yesterday you said, makes people crazy. So you say, well, that was yesterday, and that was concerning an adult. Today we're talking about you, and you're not going. Right? But that's frustrating. what then brings another kind of pleasure or another kind of satisfaction? When you've discovered the variety of details in an idea that didn't seem to be in harmony, and then somebody explains how they all work together in perfect harmony, that is a whole nother kind of pleasure. In fact, that's beauty. Now, the fact that male and female can be in harmony, can become one in marriage, that is beauty. But how does this happen? How do you get harmony when you have such different, such distinct, such varying details, which at first glance seem to be incompatible and opposites? Positive and negative in the same idea. Yes and no. This is a good solution. Sometimes it's very bad. Well, then is it good or is it bad? How can it be both? And not only can it be both, but it's both in harmony. It's like, do you love God or do you fear God? Well, you love Him and you fear Him. Okay, fine. So you love Him on Simchas Torah and you fear Him on Yom Kippur. All right, we'll work that out. But that's not harmony. That's just peace. Don't love Him on Yom Kippur and don't fear Him on Simchas Torah. Okay, we worked that out so that they're not conflicting. That's not harmony. But when we come to understand that every time you love someone, there is an element of fear, and the more you love him, the greater the fear, and the greater the fear, the more you love, now it's harmonious. But how do you get harmony? How do you produce harmony when you have inharmonious details? The answer, of course, is when the differences that the details have surrender to something greater, then they can be in harmony. So when Chachma insists on being Chachma, he can't tolerate the details. Don't ruin it by introducing facts. I've got a brilliant idea, I'm having a great time, don't destroy it for me. Or when Bina is enjoying bringing together all these details and making a really profound and thorough explanation of a subject, and you come along and say, yeah, but the whole principle is wrong. You're missing the Chachma. You got the whole idea wrong. When Chachma is Chachma, and Bina insists on being Bina, then there's no beauty. Why is there no beauty? Because there's no harmony. And why is there no harmony? Because there's no surrender to the intangible truth that precedes it. Let me put it in different words now. Things are what they are because of the properties and the qualities that they possess. Chachma is Chachma because it is the discovery of an idea. Bina is Bina because it is the development of the idea. That's what they are. And the more they are what they are, the more they conflict with each other. What allows them to get along with each other? When they start to behave not like themselves, but like their source from which they come. When they start to show the behavior or the properties of their intangible truth that preceded them, now they're starting to get along. Now they're blending, they're melding. Which means beauty is not the result of what a thing is. Beauty is the result of what it's not. Does that make any sense? What it's not. When Chachma is not being Chachma and Bina is not being Bina, now you're starting to see beauty. When red doesn't insist on being red, and the green doesn't insist on being green, you're starting to get a very beautiful color. But the beauty is not from the red and the green. The beauty is from what the red isn't and from what the green isn't. When a person surrenders his will to another person, there's beauty there. The beauty comes not from what they're going to do together. The beauty comes from what is missing. What's missing, what's not there, is the rigidity of the individuals. When red is rigid about being red and green is rigid about being green, then there's no beauty. Okay, so now, beauty is the result of harmony. But harmony is the result of humility. When each of the individuals or the details is humbled by the higher truth from which it comes, then that lack of rigidity, that's what makes beauty. So why is harmony beautiful? Not because of what it produces, but because of what's missing in the cholent, what's missing in the mix. And that's what we notice as beauty. Now, of course, you can't notice what isn't there. You don't see what isn't there. So when do we see beauty? We see beauty when we see its effect. What is the effect of this absence of rigidity, of this humility? What is its effect? It allows opposites to combine. It allows for harmony. So we call the harmony beautiful. But that's just the symptom of beauty. That's the evidence of beauty. But what is real beauty? Invisible. And why is it invisible? Because it is surrendering to something higher. So in Bina, there is a greater surrender than in Chachma. So if Chachma and Bina can come together, it's because they're both surrendering. But there's a greater amount of surrender in Bina than there is in Chachma. And possibly that's why there is less pleasure in Bina, because Bina is surrendering its pleasure. Whereas Chachma retains its pleasure and doesn't want to surrender it. That's why the feminine quality is also associated or identified with severity. There's kindness and severity. Chachma is associated with kindness. Bina is associated with severity. In some ways, women are harsher than men. In some ways. Women will not get upset or angry or hateful as readily as a man. A woman is more tolerant. A woman is more patient. A woman is more gentle. A woman is more generous in their opinion. But once a woman does hate someone, it's a lot harder to gain forgiveness than from a man. So in that sense, there's a harshness there that men don't have. And that also comes from Bina. Because in Chachma, where an idea is not divided into its details, there's a generosity and a kindness there that everything is included. Fine, everything's fine. I got this brilliant idea and it includes everything. It's the answer to everything. With this idea, we can fix the whole world. Everything's going to be good now that I discovered this idea. Well, that's not exactly true. This idea can only apply sometimes and only under certain conditions. That's Bina. In Chachma, everything's fine. Everything is solved. Everything's going to be good. Bina is more severe, more judgmental. Bina says, it's a great idea, but we're not doing it. It's not for us. The fact that Bina divides, separates, isolates the details of an idea, that's an expression of severity, of judgment. Even physically, a father produces a child and a mother produces a child. But when the father produces a child, metaphorically speaking, he's got one good idea and that's everything. And in this one good idea, in this one seed, there's everything. The whole child, the nose, the mouth, the ears, the feet, the toes, everything. The mother says, yeah, but the nose has to be here and the feet have to be there and not the other way around. So in the mother, all this good stuff that in the father is kind of like one brilliant idea without any details, in the mother, the details start to develop. And that too is a form of judgment. In fact, there's even a DNA molecule that is the judge, that decides where the nose goes and where the ears go and so on and so forth. And when that molecule isn't working, we're in big trouble, because there's no judge. It's chaos. So this idea of severity or of judgment is associated with Bina. And judgment and severity also have this quality that it is drawn towards that which is above it. Kindness is drawn to what is below it, like water that flows downhill. Judgment is more like fire, and it is drawn to what is above it. So when the Torah says, when God says to Eve, to Chava, El ishech chukosech, you will yearn for your husband, that's a description of Bina. That's a description of the quality of severity, that it yearns not for what is beneath it, but from what preceded it. And since woman was created from the man, she yearns for the man. Of course, a woman also yearns for her children. But that's another aspect that we'll talk about in a moment. So this desire to go back, to reach back to what came before, which is a godly quality, because everything, serving God means reaching back to what came first, to what came before. So this quality of severity, which is a rising, is also part of Bina, and the severity of Bina. So now we have a cooperation or a harmony between these two aspects of the feminine traits. On the one hand, there is severity, which means breaking things down into their details. And on the other hand, we have this desire to go back to a higher truth. And what do these two things produce? In the desire to go back to the higher truth, the details become harmonious. Starting to make a little sense? The reason that all the details can come together in harmony is because above and beyond the details, there is the desire to go back to the higher, previous truth. And that surrender is what allows the conflicting details to suddenly become harmonious. And that's why women are more associated with beauty than men. And when beauty is ascribed to a man, it is the feminine part of him that we're talking about. So when it says that King David was beautiful, King David is also associated with the feminine quality of Malchus, which is why he was the king. Only Malchus, as distinguished from Bina, Malchus is called the daughter, whereas Bina is called the mother. Malchus is the child born to Chachma and Bina, but it's the female child. So it also has female qualities. So when King David is described as beautiful, it's because Malchus is feminine, and feminine means the surrender to that which is higher, which brings harmony to the details, and the harmony of the details is evidence of beauty. But what really is beauty? Unintangible. What isn't is the beauty, not what is. What is harsh. It's what's not that is beautiful. On the one hand, beautiful is. This is beautiful. On the other hand, beauty means that which isn't. So what is beautiful about a person? Whether we're talking beautiful physically or beautiful in terms of character, personality, what do we mean when we say such a beautiful person? When you think about it and break it down to its real properties, when you say that person is so beautiful, you're talking about what they're not. You're talking about something that isn't there. And because it's not there, there's a beauty. Let's understand now, what is Shlomo HaMelech, what is King Solomon saying? Sheker hachein vehevel hayefi. Charm is false and beauty is vain. This is not a put down of beauty. This is not disparaging beauty. On the contrary, it's giving us the true definition of what beauty is. Beauty is not what you see, it's what you're not seeing. It's the absence, not the presence. And that's what he's alluding to when he says it's the vanity of beauty. Vanity means what isn't there. Hevel, which is translated as vanity, doesn't necessarily mean vain. Hevel is like breath. When you say words, you're basically putting sound to your breath. The breath itself is soundless, or should be, unless you're snoring. Breath should be soundless. If your breath makes noises, see a doctor. So that's why the letter Hey is called the silent letter. It's Hey, and you're not supposed to hear it. When we speak, we're taking the soundless breath and putting sound to it. That's why when a person cries, the sound of crying is basically breath that can't be organized into words. And the more painful, the more intense the crying, the less it can produce sounds. So the sounds keep breaking down, like the sounds of the shofar. You get a blast of the shofar, like a wail. That's when you're not so hurt. You know, when the kid is screaming, it's a good sign. When the kid can't scream and the wail starts to break down into little chopped up pieces, like the second sound of the shofar, the three brokens, the voice is starting to fall apart. And then when the pain becomes even deeper, it can't even make broken sounds. It can only make tiny little whimpering sounds. And then finally, it can't make any sounds at all. It's just breath. So what we see is like a sound added to what we can't see, to what you can't hear, to the soundless breath. So when it says beauty is hevel, it means what you're seeing is not the beauty. What you do see is like the sound added to the breath. But the beauty really is what you're not seeing. So hevel hayefi means beauty comes from what isn't there, not from what is there. Even physical beauty. Physical beauty comes from what's not there. What's not there? The conflict of asymmetry. What's not there is the harshness of each line on the face or each part of the face resisting the other parts of the face. in conflict with other. So beauty is the absence of conflict. It's what's not there. And that's why you can look at a person who is in conflict, and they're simply they're not pretty. They're not nice. They're not pleasant to look at. Although all their features are good, everything's in proportion. I mean, all the technical details of beauty are all there. But it's not pleasant to look at. Why? Because there's conflict there. And then the person resolves their conflict, usually through humility. And all of a sudden, they're really nice to look at. Same face. I don't know if it always applies, but what is the beauty that every bride has? Why is every bride beautiful? Well, almost every bride. It's not just that they put on a lot of makeup. There's a certain resolution of conflict. She's found her place. She's resolved her search. She's not in conflict with the world or with herself. She has mellowed. And that's the beauty of it. Why is there a certain beauty in a woman who's pregnant? Unless she doesn't want to be pregnant, and then it's not pretty at all. Then the conflict is so tangible. It's so obvious and visible. But when a woman is pregnant, there's a certain beauty there. There's a charm there. What is it from? She has surrendered. She is at peace with the fact that she's not herself anymore. She has to eat for two. She's not herself. She's plus someone. And she surrenders to this. That's the only, you can't do anything more than just surrender to it. And in that surrender, there's a certain conflictedness that goes away, and there's that charm that results from what is not there. So this is the deeper meaning of the falseness of charm and the emptiness of beauty. That's not putting beauty down. That's simply saying, don't forget what is really beautiful. It's not what you're seeing. It's what's not there that is expressed in what you're seeing, and that's where the real beauty is. So why is it? It has a very definite negative side, unholy side, but there must be a holy side to it as well. Why is it that when someone is beautiful, everyone wants them? It's like, Rachel was beautiful, Yaakov wanted to marry her. Why? Just hang her on the wall and enjoy the beauty, like a painting, like a picture, like a work of art. What do you want to marry her for? Because she's beautiful? Why are the two connected? Why do you want to marry what is beautiful and ruin a good thing? Where there's beauty, there is harmony. And where there's harmony, you could belong. You could be included in that harmony. Where there's no beauty, you don't belong. You're at war. You're in conflict with the world because you're you and nobody else is. When you see harmony, when you see beauty, you're drawn there because there you feel like maybe I could belong there. Maybe this can envelop me. Maybe I can harmonize with that too, because it's proclaiming harmony. So wherever there is that beauty, wherever there is that harmony, we feel more welcome. We feel more invited, more at peace. And of course, everybody is looking for that. And that's why you cannot describe the physical characteristics that make a woman or a man desirable for marriage. So the Gemara says, when you go to a wedding and you're supposed to make the bride and groom happy, how do you do that? What do you do to make them happy? So one of the sages says, you're supposed to dance in front of the bride and groom, and sing the words, beautiful bride and gracious. The other sage says, you can't do that at every wedding. What if she's not beautiful? You can't lie. So how can you go to every wedding and say, beautiful and gracious bride? What if she's not? So he says, no, you do something else, that is more neutral so that it can apply to everybody. But what is the first opinion? The first opinion is, you're going to a wedding. Somebody is marrying this bride because to him she's beautiful. So it's not wrong to say beautiful, gracious bride. The fact that you don't find her beautiful is because you need a different kind of harmony. Beauty is not the nose or the eyes. It's a harmony. Somebody found that harmony in this bride, so she is beautiful. We find the same thing with children. Why does everybody fall in love with a child? Because a healthy child, a normal child, has no conflicts. There's a harmony and therefore a beauty there because of what is not there yet. Unfortunately, as the child grows up, they lose that beauty because all of a sudden there's conflict. All of a sudden it's got to be my way. And then the beauty is gone. So what does all this mean? How true is harmony? How real is it? If we look at marriages today, marriage is a man and a woman becoming one. Really? How much do they really become one? Look what's going on. They get married because they understand each other so well. They feel so comfortable with each other. They complete each other. They make each other feel whole. What happened a week later? Where did all that go? So the cynic will say, there really is no harmony. You can't really have harmony. It's male and female. It's Mars and Venus. It's me and you. Come on, there can't be harmony between me and you unless you stop being you. Of course. You can just stop being like your mother. But other than that, there isn't going to be any harmony. Yeah, we can make nice for a while. We can kind of put aside our differences. But how long can that last? And how deep does that go? So the traditional blessing that we give a bride and groom is this should be a structure or an edifice for generations and generations. I'm getting a little ambitious here. They just met each other, you know what I mean? They should get through the honeymoon intact would be a big blessing. And here we're talking already about generations and generations. What we mean to say is, if the harmony is true, then it's permanent. Real harmony is permanent. Because if there's no conflict, what would ever break this harmony? So once you attain harmony, it's forever. Conflict can't last forever. Something's got to give. But harmony, why shouldn't harmony last forever? A war must come to an end. But peace has to end? No, peace means it's good. So why would it ever end? And that's why when Mashiach comes, there will be peace Forever. Really, forever? We're not used to that. Because we've never had real peace. But by definition, real peace must be forever. Because if the peace is temporary, it meant that there was some unresolved issue all along that has finally erupted, and you never really had peace. So if there is real harmony, it's forever. It's like perpetual motion. Once you start something going, why would it stop? So, when the Torah says, Yaakov married Rachel and she was beautiful, who cares? It's a long time ago. We don't have any pictures of our grandmother Rachel. So, it's nice to know she was beautiful, but this is Torah. We don't mention trivia in Torah. So what is Torah telling us? Why are we being introduced to Yaakov or to Rachel? Because you want to finish your family tree? We're being told about Yaakov and Rachel because what they did is permanent. The reason there are Jews in the world today is because Yaakov married Rachel and Leah. What's the connection? When they established a family, it was forever. It's 4,000 years later, and we are the children of Jacob. Why? Why do we have to go back that far? Why do we have to retain this memory of an ancient ancestor called Yaakov? And identify ourselves as his children? Shouldn't we kind of update it a little bit? It's not ancient history. We are what we are because Yaakov married Rachel, which means they joined together in an eternal bond. What made it eternal? She was beautiful. Make sense now? So mentioning that Rachel was beautiful is not some petty detail which is in conflict with Shlomo HaMelech's statement that beauty is vain and false. On the contrary, Torah tells us Sarah was beautiful. Chava was so much more beautiful that it made a monkey out of Sarah. It's because the marriage between Adam and Chava not only produced a family of man forever and ever, but the family of man forever and ever. And why did they have that kind of permanent bonding? Because she was beautiful. The Medrash also says that Adam was so gorgeous that he darkened the sun. So maybe it was because he was beautiful that their marriage lasted. No question about it. It takes two. But since beauty is more in Bina than in Chachma, the woman's beauty gets mentioned more than the man. The way things are supposed to be means the way things are in truth. That's the way they are. Every woman has more Bina than a man. Every Jew desires to serve God. How many Jews do you know? Is that true? Every Jew wants to keep all the mitzvahs. That's true. Is it true? Yeah. At some level. Which means to say that there is a truth, there is a reality that is absolutely true and correct and real. And then there is the unfortunate fact that we are not always true. I mean, it's a very simple thing. God is everywhere. God is everything. Right? Yeah, but. Yeah, but we don't always realize that. We don't always feel like that. It doesn't always look like that. In other words, physical existence does not always match truth. Not because it's not true. True is true. But physical isn't always in harmony with truth. Why? Because we have freedom of choice. And in that freedom of choice, we can and do choose what isn't true. So in our choices, a man can behave like a woman. A woman can behave like a man. Not maliciously, not intentionally, but that's the way it is. Because the physical does not obey truth. But that can't be forever. The truth has to prevail. So eventually, even the physical will match the truth. So right now, no, not every woman is gentle and not every man is aggressive. In the positive sense. Not every woman is beautiful. So the Gemara says, what happened? How can this be? A woman is beautiful. Say, well, what about all these ugly women running around? Where do they come from? They're not obeying the rule. They're supposed to be beautiful, and they're not listening. The Gemara says, their poverty has made them homely. In other words, the lack of godliness, the poverty, the fact that the physical moves away from truth and is bereft of truth, is impoverished, that's where the ugliness comes from. But as soon as we go back to true, you know what's true? True is every woman is beautiful. By definition. Because a woman is in harmony, and harmony is beauty, and it's what you don't see that's beautiful, so why can't everybody be beautiful? As long as it's what you don't see. Beauty has remained a mystery. But why is it a mystery, and why don't we know exactly what it is? Because it's what's not there. And what's not there is very hard to define. So it turns into a mystery. But it's not like there is something we should be seeing and it's a mystery as to what that is. No. It's supposed to be a mystery. In other words, the mystery is not interfering. It's the mystery that is the beauty. So it's not elusive. That's what it is. When you say it's mysterious, you've pinned it down. Now you've put your finger on it. So it's not like, oh, it's a mystery, so we still have to continue searching for it. No. You got it. That's exactly what it is. It's a mystery. It's an enigma. There's another distinction made between male and female, and that is that the man is the giver, and the woman is the receiver. Or man is the light, and woman is the vessel. In Chachma and Bina, we see it very clearly. Chachma has to produce an idea for Bina to be able to develop. So, in their relationship, Chachma gives, Bina receives. Of course, Bina then becomes the giver to the emotions, to the children. So when she becomes the mother, then she is the giver and the children are the receiver. But in her relationship between herself and her husband, she receives from the husband and doesn't return it physically. Which is an interesting thing, that the man is the giver, the woman is the receiver, but the child is whatever the woman is. If the woman is Jewish, the child is Jewish. If the mother is not Jewish, the child is not Jewish. So if the woman is the receiver and she's working only with what the husband gave, how did the child end up being hers? So you see, in a sense, she receives from her husband, but she doesn't give it back. She keeps it. The child is hers. And Adam actually names his wife, Chava, the mother of all living things. And why doesn't he call himself the father of all living things? No, he is Adam, from the earth. Why isn't he the father of all living things? So the mother actually takes the child from the father, but doesn't give it back. It becomes hers. She is the mother of all living things. And where did she get this from? This guy from the earth. The guy who was made out of dust. So what is the connection between being the receiver and beauty, being the receiver and severity? obviously, the receiver yearns to receive. Right? The vessel yearns for the light, which means a tendency to rise. The light yearning to be received is moving downwards, not upwards. So being the receptive gender means that you're always moving upwards. At the same time, the male is something like with Avraham and Sarah. Avraham represents the soul and Sarah represents the body. That the male is the soul and the female is the body. And that's why when a man and a woman get together and they're married, you have a body and a soul. You have a complete human being. But why does the woman represent the body more than the man? She's the receiver. But also, this explains why beauty is associated with the body. The body beautiful. Here's that interesting turnaround. You would think that the giver is higher than the receiver. And in chronological order, that's true. The giver is higher. Comes first. First there was Adam, then there was Chava. But in terms of spirituality, what comes first isn't necessarily more spiritual. In terms of spirituality, it's the direction that makes you spiritual. So if you're moving downwards, that's physical. If you're moving upwards, that's spiritual. So in terms of movement, in terms of processing, the woman's processing is more spiritual because she's moving upwards. So she starts off being the body, physical, but because her direction is upwards, so she's more spiritual. She's more conscious and in tune with the spiritual because she's seeking it. Whereas the man who started off being spiritual, but he is seeking to be embodied, can lose sight of his spirituality because he's so busy trying to get earthed. And that's why historically men have on various occasions completely lost their bearing. For example, in Egypt, learning to live with Egypt or handling or surviving Egypt distracted the men completely from their purpose and from their objective, and they became Egyptians. And when Moshe came and said it's time to leave, they couldn't relate to it. What do you mean leave? We belong here. We're part of this. This is our place. We've become Egyptians. And only 1/5 of the people actually left. And the only reason the 5th that left did leave was because the women did not become Egyptians. They didn't lose sight of their purpose, and the same thing happened in the desert. The men got used to being in the desert. When it came time to go into Israel, they couldn't. But the daughters of Tzlofchad not only were perfectly willing to go, but fought, argued for a portion of the land. There's a mystical association between the feminine and the land, which is another interesting thing. Because Eretz, the Hebrew word Eretz, the land, also is related to the word Ratzon, desire, a will. The desire to serve, the desire to rise, the desire to merge with godliness is associated with land, with Eretz. And that's what we mean by holy land. What's a holy land? A land is a land. What do you mean a holy land? What are the stones are holy? The sand is holy? What's a holy land? So you could say, well, it's the place where holy things happen. But that doesn't make it a holy land. It makes it the scene of a holy event. Why is it a holy land? And if it's holy because of holy things that happened, why isn't Mount Sinai holy? We're not even sure where it is anymore. And nobody particularly cares. It's one of those mountains. What happened here? This old wall, oh, this is... And it's just a fragment. And there's this mountain, and what's one of those? This is Mount Sinai. If you're talking about holy things that happened, so obviously holy land is not the result of a holy event. Besides which, God told Avraham to go to the Holy Land long before anything holy happened there. It is the Holy Land. And that's why holy things will happen there. Not the other way around. So how can land be holy? When Mashiach comes, all the lands will be holy. The world will be filled with holiness. Which means God created earth. He created heaven, but he also created earth. Now heaven is very heavenly, but it doesn't yearn for godliness. Earth is very earthy, but because it is far from God, because it's the body, because it's the vessel, it yearns for godliness. It goes upwards. Heaven comes down. Earth goes up. So earth is holier than heaven. Like women are more spiritual than men. The direction. Well, the technical requirement, the halachic requirement, is not that he be beautiful. It's that he not be distasteful to look at. He shouldn't have deformities. He shouldn't have skin problems. He shouldn't have... because that would be a distraction. To who? To people who are looking at him. To people receiving the blessings from him. So even today, a Kohen who has deformities or ugly something, there's a whole thing about his duchening or not duchening, or which is one of the reasons that the Kohen covers himself with the talus. So there's no distraction to... I thought you were going to say that a Kohen Gadol, in order to be a Kohen Gadol, must be married. In fact, it is such an indispensable part of his function that on Yom Kippur, when the Kohen Gadol does his main, he must be married. And it is so vital that the week before Yom Kippur, another woman is appointed who will be his wife automatically should his wife die. So that there won't be a moment where he won't be married. Well, the technical reason is because on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol represents the people. He's praying for them, he's representing them, he's gaining forgiveness for them. And if he's not married, then he doesn't feel, he doesn't belong, he's not connected to the people. He's an individual. I say some interesting things. Somebody once was by the Rebbe and said to the Rebbe, "You're almost feminine. You look so feminine," something like that. And the Rebbe said, "Thank you very much." When the Rebbe's wife passed away, the Rebbe said, I can't go on with this. All health problems, financial problems. Don't ask me anymore. I can't relate anymore. So, there's this woman who the Rebbe had many conversations with, and at one point the Rebbe recommended that she date this man. Anyway, to make a long story short, they met, they got married. And they were having problems. She was not happy. She had complaints. So one of the times that she came to the Rebbe with the problem in their marriage, And she was on the verge of calling it off. So the Rebbe said, you can't do that. Everybody knows that I recommended this guy, and what will that do to my reputation if you... She said, more than anything else, that's what kept her in the marriage. So for personal reasons, she would have left, but she couldn't do this to the Rebbe, because the Rebbe made it personal. He said, no, you ruined my reputation. So when she told me this, I thought, that was so cute. But then thinking about it more seriously, how could the Rebbe say something like that? What, his reputation, his ego is on the line, and that's why she should stay married when she's unhappy? What is that? What is the deeper meaning here? I was reading in this little booklet here on marriage and women, taken from the Rebbe's writings. In one place, the Rebbe says, family is a miniature model of the vast eternal plan for which God created the world. God created the world in order to bring together heaven and earth, in order to bring together the highest and the lowest, and create a harmony out of opposites or out of contrasts. Marriage is a little model of the bigger picture of where God wants this world to be his home. When Mashiach comes, that will... And until then, that's what family means. Family means a place where everyone who lives there has a common goal and a single goal, and that is to serve God. So when Mashiach comes, the whole world will function the way a family functions today. A family devoted to God. In a sense, God says to us, don't get divorced. What will that do to my reputation? In other words, if a family can't happen, how will the vast eternal plan ever happen? So if the family can't work, then God says, my whole reputation is on the line here. This whole vast eternal plan, maybe it can't happen. Maybe the whole plan is flawed. Don't do this to me. So I guess in a sense the Rebbe was saying the same thing. The Rebbe wasn't saying my reputation as a matchmaker. No one will ever follow my advice on marriage again. What the Rebbe was saying is, my whole reputation is that I bring harmony, I bring godliness. And if I can't even bring godliness between two people, how am I going to bring godliness to the Jewish people and to Jews and non-Jews? And, everything I stand for in the cosmic picture is being undermined when I can't even succeed in the microcosmic world. So basically, family and the harmony and the beauty that allows that harmony is a model for the whole cosmic picture. And the fact that we're having a little trouble with this family thing, that families are in trouble, can only be explained as, now that we're getting close to the conclusion of the cosmic family drama, the final resistance and the final opposition is to the heart of the issue, which is the family itself. But if we overcome that, the final hurdle, then the success of the vast eternal plan is very, very close.